Hello there and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire. I am so excited to be here on the Gina K channel, and I have a special card to share with you. Now, this card incorporates several fun techniques into one card, but what's really special about this card is it's going to Rina and Brian for their wedding. Now, Gina has been showing me some of the photos of the wedding prep, so I chose to use colors on this card that they will be having in their wedding. Let's look at the completed card before we get creating. This is what it looks like when you take it out of the envelope, a classic white and gold look. But this is a special card because it's a magic slider card. You pull the tab at the top and you reveal beautiful color inside, a stained glass look, and there's a shaker window element there with some soft glitter that moves around. So lots of different elements in this card. You could just pick and choose what you would like to incorporate in a card you create, or try them all together to create something really special. On this card, I'll be using one of my most used Gina K sets. This is the Thoughtful Flowers. I really like the thin line florals on this, and I like the sentiments that you can build together. You could even do Thinking of You on your wedding day from this set, but I end up using a different sentiment. There's also a coordinating die set and a coordinating stencil set, so you can color in the flowers very quickly. There are even polyglaze sheets of these images, so if you want a foil look, you could definitely use those. I'll just be using the stamps and the stencils. And I will also use the Gina K Master Layouts 11. This is one of my favorite master layout sets. All the elements in here are fun to use, but today I'll be using this kind of window die. It is great for the card that we're making, but you could just use a plain rectangle if you prefer. All right, so let's get started by doing our stamping. I have my Misty stamping tool, and inside of it, I have my Gina K background grip mat, and that will hold my cardstock in place. I love that her grip mats have stamps on one side, two different background stamps, and a flat side on the other that fits into your Misty stamping tool. So you can either use it as a grip mat or as stamps. Now I'm taking that window die and putting it over a 4¼ by 5½ inch piece of white cardstock, and I'm kind of planning where I want to put this large floral element. I considered putting it like vertical here I'll stamp it on the left and the right, but in the end, I decided to go with the top left corner and the bottom right corner. The reason I put the die down is it's helping me to see what will actually be showing in the completed card. Once I like the position, I'll remove the die and my stamp is in the perfect spot. Again, this is a 4¼ by 5½ inch white cardstock panel. I'm stamping this image with Gina K Warm Glow ink. Then watch, I'll rotate my cardstock 180 degrees and do that again. And this will result in that floral image being on the top left and the bottom right of my panel. I'm using Warm Glow, which is a super soft ink, because I really don't need the outlines to show up on the final card. I just need them to be soft enough for me to be able to line up the stencils. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. Any light color of ink would work there. All right, now here's a closer look at what that Warm Glow color is. I think it's beautiful. It's great for no line coloring, but I'm never brave enough to try that, but it works great for this technique too. Next, I have a piece of scrap cardstock. I chose blue just so you could see better, and I am covering it with a very generous amount of anti-static powder. I want as much as I can get on there because we're going to heat emboss on acetate, and I want to make sure it comes out nice and clean. I'm putting that into the corner of my stamping tool. Then on top of that, I will put a piece of heat-resistant acetate that I have used anti-static powder on both sides. So you can see I'm putting that powder on very generous on both sides of that heat-resistant acetate. This heat-resistant acetate is from Simon Says Stamp. I'll put that on top of that cardstock piece. So now that acetate is surrounded by anti-static powder tool. Now, you don't need to use that much probably, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I will then ink up my stamp with Gina K embossing ink, and I'll stamp it onto one side here. Then I will rotate that acetate 180 degrees and stamp on the opposite corner. The reason I put that cardstock underneath is I did not want my acetate to stick to the grip mat and have that leave any kind of sticky residue that the embossing powder would want to stick to. So by putting the cardstock down, lots of anti-static powder on both sides, we're going to be sure that we don't have any powder sticking where we don't want it. You can see the two clear stamped images on the front of that acetate. Now I will sprinkle on gold embossing powder. I like to kind of wiggle it around on top to make sure that it sticks to all of the exposed embossing ink. By the way, if you've never tried Gina K embossing ink, I highly recommend it. I recently switched to it and I think it works wonderfully. You get nice crisp images and you don't have to re-ink it often. All right, so once I'm sure, oops, made a little mess there, but once I'm sure I've covered that with gold embossing powder, I will flick it pretty generously to knock off the excess. I will then warm up my heat gun for a couple minutes, bring it to that acetate and keep the gun moving so you don't cause any warping. If you use a heat-resistant acetate, you will be fine, and you'll see you end up with a beautiful gold image on the acetate. If you have acetate and unsure or if you can heat emboss on it, just test it by putting a heat gun up to it. If it doesn't warp, you're good to go. Now, once I'm done, I'll let that cool, and then I can use a dry cloth to wipe off all of that anti-static powder, and we'll end up with a really crisp, clear panel with gorgeous gold embossing. Now, this is something that is beautiful as is. You could just make a simple panel, like maybe do a frame and do this inside of that frame on the front of a card. You could keep it simple, but we're going to do magic slider card today, and this will be the front of our magic slider window. I love this result. This stamp is beautiful for it, but Gina K has many florals that would work. Now, when I put this on top of the other stamp panel, they will line up perfectly. That's why we used our Misty stamping tool. All right, so now I will use a baby wipe just to take off that extra anti-static powder that is on our grip mat. And then I will use that grip mat to help hold my stencils in place as we color our floral images. So I'm going to set aside that gold heat emboss acetate piece for later. Right now we're going back to the white panel where we stamped the florals twice with the warm glow ink. We'll use the coordinating stencils to add color. Now I'm trying to kind of come up with my own colors here that work along with what Rina and Brian are doing in their wedding. And so here are the colors that I'm using. I'll also talk about them as I go. For the first center flower, I wanted that to kind of be the focal point. I am using the bubblegum pink and I'm using the larger Gina K blending brush. I did that pretty light, and then I will come in with the much darker dark cranberry color and a smaller blending brush and just put that towards the center. You can see I have my little brush bucket up there on the top that has all the different blending brushes from Gina K in it. That is a super handy tool to have, and I love how it rotates. All right, so I've put that extra ink in the center, so it's really light pink on the tips and darker red at the center. Now, when I go to wipe away the excess ink, what I did is I dragged some of the ink off the stencil onto my flower, and I thought it looked pretty cool. I'll show you a close-up here in a moment. It like has this these like little lines on the edge of my flower. Can you see it there? Right there. There's like little lines on the edge. And I thought that looked pretty cool. So I decided to do that on all of the petals on this flower. Now it's pretty subtle in this card that I'm doing because there's so much else going on this card. But that is definitely a technique for another day. I've done that technique using different products, but not with dye ink and a cloth. That little accident turned out to be something I can do again in the future. So here I'm just putting more of the dark cranberry onto my stencil and dragging it with the dry cloth over the opening. And I'm kind of dragging from the tip of the petals inward, and it gives those little lines on the petals. Now, this is something I could do when I maybe have a large floral or large leaf, and that's kind of the focus of the card. But for this particular card, I only did this on the one flower on both sides because a lot of it's going to be covered with the other techniques we're doing. But I just decided to finish this off so you could see the results of this little discovery that I did by accident. There you can see those little edges on the petals, and I thought that looked really cool. Next time I could do a better job with like the direction they go in, but you know what? I love a happy accident. All right, so now I will do the exact same inking on the flower on the opposite corner. So basically the floral arrangement I'm doing on the top, I will do the exact same thing on the floral arrangement on the bottom. So those pink and cranberry flowers are the center of the arrangements. On either side of that flower, there are side opening flowers, and I'm doing those in a lighter pink. So I will still use the bubble gum, but I'll just do heavy amount of bubble gum at the base of the flower and then fade that out to almost white at the tips of the petals. And I will do that for all 4 of those light pink flowers. So we'll have kind of a pink and cranberry flower in the middle, and then just pink flowers next to it. You could make each of these a different color. You could do a rainbow, but again, I'm sticking to a particular color palette to kind of personalize this card. All right, once I've done all 4 of those, it's time to do the little buds or little flowers at the end of the arrangement. These I will do in a sweet corn color. Sweet corn is one of my favorite yellows. It's not as bright as a wild dandelion color. It's a little more muted. I love the color. So I did sweet corn with a little bit of honey mustard at the base of the flower, and I will do that on the other small flowers left over also. Then it's time for the leaves. Now I could have done all of the different leaves, different colors, but I used the same colors on all the leaves because Gina mentioned this color palette and I wanted to stick with it still even with the leaves. So I have light spruce and medium spruce. I do light spruce coming heavy at the base of the leaf out to very light at the tip. And then I come in with the medium spruce heavy at the base of the leaf. So this just gives kind of that look of shading. Now there are a lot of people out there who blend much better than I do, but in the end, I feel like if you just take a little bit of effort, you can get big results. And here we have the final result. Now, when you put the gold overlay over it, it really makes it look beautiful. It gives it kind of a stained glass look. If you prefer to do watercolor or Copic markers, you definitely could do that. Any kind of coloring method works for this. Now that we have the inside of our windows completed here, it's time to create the window itself for the magic slider. Now remember, I'm doing a window for my magic slider that has those 4 panels. If you don't have a die like that, it could just be one big window. One big rectangle die would work great for it. I just thought this particular die from the Master Layouts 11 set would be fun. The nice thing about this die is the outside edge is 4¼ by 5½ inches, so it's really easy to center on a panel of the same size. You could use this cut piece for the front of your magic slider window. However, I wanted to add some layers. So this die here is from Master Layouts 14. It cuts a 3¾ by 5-inch rectangle with faux stitching on the inside edge. So I use Master Layouts 11 and 14 together to create that window. I love the Master Layouts for the basic sizes that they offer, so you can do lots of layering with them. I thought it'd be fun to have a gold mat around that. So I'm using a regular rectangle die from Master Layouts 1. This cuts a rectangle that is slightly bigger than the 3¾ by 5 inches. And from the center of that rectangle, I will cut the Master Layouts window. So what I'm doing is just creating layers to put on the front of my magic slider window. You could definitely just do the one layer and skip all this, but I think this will look great in the end and add lots of interest. So there you can see that gold mat peeking out. So basically that gold piece is just a little bit bigger than that window itself. And now I can start gluing these together. Now, again, I'm doing several layers to add interest, but you could cut these with regular rectangle dies or your trimmer. You don't have to do as many layers as I'm doing here with the faux stitching, but I think it adds a lot of interest in the end. So now we have our window with the nice gold mat around it. Let's give that a little time to dry, and while we do that, we will cut down the 2 floral pieces. So here I'm holding together the acetate piece with the gold heat embossing and the piece that we inked with our stencils. I'm holding them lined up together and cutting an equal amount off of all sides of it. I end up cutting this down to be about 3½ by 4¾ inches. That way, these pieces will hide behind the outer edges of our magic slider window, that piece that we've created over on the right. So in the end, again, the acetate piece and the inked piece will be cut down to about 3½ by 4¾ The reason I'm cutting them together, holding them together, is so that they will still line up nicely. I could have started with that size, but I wasn't sure where I was going with the design of the card, so I started bigger and cut it down. So here you can see those floral pieces will be hidden behind that frame. But at this point, I decided I wanted that frame on the front to be bigger. So I'm gonna add another layer. You do not have to do all of these layers. You could just do this one layer I'm about to create. But what I have here is a 4¼ by 5½ inch white panel. And I will once again cut the window from that. Now, again, just use this piece if you want to. I will add the other window frame right on top of it in a moment. Now, before we add that, I do want to cut a little notch in the top of it. So this is just a circle die that's about 1 inch in diameter. And I'm putting it so it's halfway along the top center of that panel. Again, this panel is 4¼ by 5½ inches. I will tape that in place and run it through my die cut machine, and that will give me a little notch at the top. This notch will make it easier for the magic slider panel to pull out to reveal the color inside. I also have a side folding note card of the exact same size, 4¼ by 5½ inches. I'll line the panel up on the front and then take that same circle die and pop it into the notch we've already cut. It'll kind of fit in like a puzzle piece. And then I will tape it there, remove the panel where we've already cut that notch, and then cut the notch into the front of our note card and the back of our note card. So I'll run that through with the note card closed, and there we have the notch on the front and back of our card and the front panel. Again, this will make it easy for us to pull the magic slider panel up and out very easily. All right, so now onto the front of this, we can glue that layered frame that we created earlier. Now what I have here, before I put the glue down, is enough. You could leave it as is. What I'm about to glue on top of it, once again, is really just for added interest. I like to put all those layers. I know Gina likes to layer things too, usually with a black layer, but I decided to do gold, and I really think it steps up your card with not too much extra effort. I am using Gina K Connect in the matte version. I have switched to only using the matte version in the fine tip bottle. I feel like it works great for everything, and so I use it for all of my crafting. We're in the home stretch. It's time to put everything together. I'll start by flipping the window panel over, and on the back side, I will glue our acetate piece with the gold heat embossed outline. And I'm trying to center it up there, and I just use tape. I use good old Scotch tape to tape it in place. You could use liquid adhesive, you could use tape runner, whatever you want. But I figure the clear tape works great, and no one will ever see it. I did put some glue at the center panels there, just to make sure it is secure also onto that window. But in the end, what's holding this all together well is that Scotch tape all around the outside. Once we finish this, we'll have on the front what looks like a window with those gold heat embossed window panes, and it's a beautiful look as is. You could even skip the magic slider effect if you wanted to. But if you want to do a regular magic slider card, you could assemble it right now as a magic slider, which I'll show you in a bit. But I'm stepping this version up, making it extra special by doing a shaker element inside. So that inked piece over on the left, we're going to make it a flat shaker window. So I have a piece of clear packaging. This happens to be from a Gina K stencil set. It's the packaging it comes in. It's thin, clear plastic. I am laying my flower panel face down onto it, and I'm folding the edges over to wrap around of that clear packaging. Now I'm using Scotch tape once again because I feel like it's the easiest way to do this. You could use whatever tape you want, anything that is secure. Now I'm putting glitter into this, so I really need to make sure that all the corners and edges are sealed nicely. So tape is an easy way to do this. I start by folding over the left and right sides and taping them down. Then on the bottom here, I'll do a little folded corner and tape that, fold the other corner and tape that, and then fold that over onto the panel and tape that. So basically it's like you're wrapping a gift. That way you know those little corners are secure and there won't be any glitter escaping those. If you're using larger sequins, like flat sequins, you don't have to make sure it's that secure, but with loose glitter you definitely want to, or when they shake it, the glitter will come flying out. Now the top there, I'm going to leave open so we can add our glitter, but I am going to go through and put lots of tape to seal up every edge that I have folded back. Now into this, you can put whatever glitter you want to. I'm just using an iridescent glitter because I feel like that will add a little bit of sparkle, but not distract from the color I've already done on my inking. So I have some eco-friendly glitter here. Prisma glitter would work great. And I'm putting just a couple small scoops in. Now, you could put more, but I spent so much time getting those colors just right on those floral images. I don't want to cover it up. So the less you put in, the less movement you get, but the more that your images will show. So you just need to find the balance that you want to do. I did 2 small scoops of this, and then I did 1 scoop of like a chunky glitter. These are like little like mini flat sequins. I found these in my stash that I've had for many years, and I'll put 1 scoop of those in too. I do recommend clear here so it doesn't distract from all the inking that you did. Once you're happy with how much you have in there, you can go ahead and do a gift wrap fold at the other end too. Again, you can't have too much tape here to make sure that it really all stays secure inside. Now there are many ways you can make a flat shaker window like this, but this is one of the easiest. And this is a technique that you could do directly onto the front of a card, add a sentiment, and you're good to go. But here I'm layering it in with my magic slider technique. And by the way, if you don't have clear like Scotch tape in your craft room, I recommend having it. It's often the best and fastest way to secure things that people won't see. All right, so now we can put everything together. I have my note card here that has the notch in the top, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I need to add my flat shaker card to the center of it. So I put a little bit of Gina K tape at the center, and then I will also put some strong liquid adhesive, Gina K Connect, on the back of my shaker window. Then I will line this shaker window up behind the gold panel. So I'm lining up the gold outline with the inking on the shaker window behind it. I will hold this all together and then lay it down onto my card. Sorry, my head gets in the way, but that way I can be sure that my shaker window here, my inked shaker window, will line up with the gold when I do end up adhering it on top. So I used some glue runner and some liquid adhesive to secure that. The liquid adhesive will take some time to dry, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of Scotch tape around the edges just to make sure that that shaker window glues and holds flat onto my note card. I don't want anything hindering my little magic slider panel that will pull in and out, so taping the edges makes it smoother. All right, so now you can see when I put this frame on the front, it'll all line up nicely. All right, next up, we need to put some foam tape around the back side of the front panel or a magic slider. But I'm only putting the foam tape on the left, the right, and the bottom. I'm using the shaker foam tapes from Gina K. I love how these are nice and thick, easy to use, they're cut to size, and they work wonderfully for this. I'm putting 2 on the left and the right side and 1 along the bottom. You could use any foam tape that you want here. You could even stack up strips of cardstock if you don't want it to be as thick. But I wanted some dimension to this so that it made the card extra special. But again, you're only putting the tape along the left edge, the right edge, and the bottom. That top where we cut that little notch, we want to leave that open so the magic slider panel can come in and out easily. So here you can see there is foam tape on the left side, the bottom, and the right side, but the top is open. Now I have another panel of white cardstock. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I need to cut it down so it's just wide enough to fit between the foam tape on the left and the right. Instead of measuring, I'm just going to use a pencil to put a little tick mark to mark how wide it needs to be. So see how it's tucked in the left side of the foam tape, and then I put a mark on the right side. Then I will cut it at that pencil mark. That's the easiest way to figure out how wide of a piece of cardstock I can have to slide in and out between the foam tape. Sometimes it's just not worth getting out a ruler and doing any kind of math. So there you can see how that will slide in and out easily. You want a little wiggle room to it. I will then press it all the way down against the bottom foam tape, put a mark at the top where the top edge of the front panel is, and cut there. That way I have a white panel here that goes all the way into the foam tape we put on the back. All right, now let's put it all together. I'll go ahead and remove the release paper from the back of my foam strips and then place it onto the front of our card. Now, to make sure that it lines up nicely, I like to use the corner of my MISTI stamping tool. I put my card into the corner and then line up the panel into the corner, and it'll all line up nicely. Because remember, my panel that has the window on it is 4¼ by 5½ inches, and so is my note card. So now we can take the magic slider panel and put it right inside. Now, some people make magic slider cards so that you can't actually pull the entire panel out. There's like a little catch so it doesn't come out. But I prefer to make it so it slides right out. So the recipient gets it with the panel inside. They remove the panel and just keep the card itself on display. All right, for a sentiment at the center of this, I could have used the thoughtful flowers thinking of you on your wedding day, as I mentioned earlier, but I decided to go with beautiful things, another of my favorite Gina K sets. I thought the sentiment that says, wishing you a day filled with beautiful things would be wonderful for a wedding day, but it would also work for birthday or just a general occasion. So I gold heat embossed that on white and used the coordinating die to cut it out and put a few extra die cuts behind it for a stacked look. And I'm gluing it right in the center of our window on the front of the card. Now, when I create magic slider cards like this, I do like to round the corners of the panel that comes in and out, just so those little sharp corners don't get caught on the foam tape on the inside. It should be fine, but by rounding it, it goes in and out very smoothly and you'll have no trouble at all. I did finish this by putting a few gold gemstones onto the acetate on the front of the card. And I love how when it's closed, it looks like just a gold and white classic looking card, but when you pull the tab, the color is revealed on the inside. You could stamp or write pull on the tab or put a little message on the inside, encouraging the recipient to pull that tab out. I also love how when you remove that magic slider panel, you see this kind of stained glass look on the inside with those little shaker bits that catch the light nicely. So I incorporated a lot of different techniques into one card, but you could break them up into simpler cards if you prefer. But putting them all together makes a really special card for a special day. If you're interested in the supplies I use, Gina does have them linked below in the YouTube description. And Gina, I love you and thank you for having me today. And Rina and Brian, I wish you the best. Have a great day.